garden friends. Today we're going to talk about 10 things beginners should know when starting a container garden. This was at a request of a viewer, and I thought it was a good time to really cover this information. This is not the end all. There's more information that you can delve into, but these are 10 basics you really need to know before you start a container garden, which is perfect for small spaces like decks, patios, balconies, etc. So let's get talking container growing. Yeah, one thing about it, growing in containers isn't hard, but there's a few basics that you do need to know. And we're going to go through all 10 of them. I'll try not to be too chatty, but I do get long-winded in these. But also during that time frame, which is a perfect opportunity to talk about potting up the tomato, because I'm going to pot it up in a container for now. So this is a celebrity. It's a tried and true variety. It's already budding. I hate to cut off the buds, but I need to. And I'm going to prune it back for you. Where is my stuff? Right there. Okay, first of all, this needs to be potted up into a bigger container because this size pot is not good. The roots need to develop. So it's going in a larger pot. Not too much larger, but I can't plant this out for maybe 6-8 weeks. So I need to pot it up. Alrighty, and that goes to pot size matters. Point number 1. Container gardens shouldn't be grown in very small pots. It would be a trial to do so. You could grow small plants in them, but there's a reason why you shouldn't. So one of the common beginner mistakes is choosing a pot that's too small. And they dry out faster, heat up quicker, and the roots really don't have space to spread like you would like them to. So if you're unsure, go bigger. A larger container, it gives you a buffer, and you really do need that buffer, especially when you're just getting started. Before we go into number 2, I am going to prune this back. Why? Because pinching it helps it to stay stocky, and you know what? I'm going to cut it right above this leaf stalk or stem. And look, and you know what I can do? I'm going to cut off the flowers, but I can cut off these. I could put this in water and it will root, or I can put it in soil. I may just put it back in its original pot, but in the meantime, I'm going to stick it right here in some water. So I'm going to pull this out of the container, compost bin. Nice roots. They're not even root bound, even though this was kind of a small container. So I'm not going to have to do anything. I'll loosen up the bottom here a little bit. I'm going to fill this container while we move on. So drainage, number 2. Drainage is non-negotiable. If your pot doesn't have a drainage hole, it's not a planter, it's a vase. Water sitting in the bottom, collected in the bottom of a container plant, means sure death. Your plant roots will rot. That stagnant water, or it's sitting in that water, will suffocate it because no oxygen can get to those roots, and they need oxygen. So I'm going to have to get more soil, potting soil. Got this about the right height. Now I can bury it where it comes above these leaves down here, because that stem will produce more roots. Let me get some more soil and we'll come back. If you fall in love with a container that doesn't have a hole and you really want to use it, drill one. Or you can use it as what I call a pot sleeve, where you put like a pot like this inside of that decorative pot. Just make sure that it doesn't sit in water, because that will act as a catch tray. So healthy roots, they need both water, but they also need air, the oxygen. So that's an important point there. Number 3, the soil matters. So use a potting mix, even if you make your own, not garden soil. And I have a DIY potting mix on my blog, but I have gotten away from it. Had some coconut coir in it. I no longer use coconut coir, and I do not use peat moss. I found both are unnecessary. I don't like how they hold too much moisture. They can become compressed so that soil becomes a block. I mean like a chunk of hard block. So what I use is just my DIY compost, my compost I make, and or I buy a bulk compost. I mix it with perlite, and sometimes I'll mix it with horticultural sand depending if I need weight in that container. And also sometimes I will use green sand if I have it on hand. I had bought some. I think I'm out now. I think I used it all up. But that just has minerals and stuff in it. But it's absolutely unnecessary. And if you have your own worm castings, add a handful of worm castings, because that is just really great for the plants. Why do I not really say store-bought? Because a lot of times store-bought, they have to pasteurize it, and that destroys a lot of the goodness in it. But if you have your own vermicomposting system, then that works great. You can collect from that, and it's wonderful for container plants. In the near future, when I start planting out in my secret cottage garden, I will show you how I do an in-ground vermicomposting system that works fantastically. So I have it all potted up, and you just wait and see how this thing grows beautifully. Now I will pot up, or I will find a container to put that in. It will grow roots. Maybe I'll just try it. I'm going to go ahead and do like I said and just put it in here. A lot of times I'll use rooting hormone. There's a liquid, there's powder. I have one in my description box below. I just make sure that these leaf nodes are under the soil. The second one is going to be hard to cover because it's kind of shallow. But this will produce roots if I keep it good and moist without being soggy. And you'd be surprised at how well this roots. Okay, nope, I still don't have the second one. Let me get some more potting soil. I will put the tag back in here so I'll know that that's what this one is. But yes, beautiful. So, number 4, containers dry out faster than you think. So if you don't have a drip system set up for them, which they have patio kits, etc. I had one for a while. I loved it. I moved things around and I didn't reset it up. That's a goal of mine. It does make a big, big difference. Just make sure you don't get it set where it gets too much water. But every day, check your pots. And how I like to check, some people say stick your finger in there. To me, it's not really the best, because the roots, you can have a really huge pot, and testing the first top 2 inches isn't accurate. So I have a moisture meter, and I just stick it down. It has a long stem. I'll link it below. And then it'll say moist, wet, or soaking, or dry. Now, if it's just leaning towards the dry side, I will go ahead and water if I don't have it set up for drip. And that's one way also you can set up your drip, is to test it every day. And if it's staying too moist, then you can back off on how often it waters, etc. But do keep up with proper moisture levels in your pots. And remember, smaller pots are going to dry out faster than bigger pots. Terracotta pots that breathe and moisture wicks out or evaporates out faster, they also will dry out faster. So just be mindful of the type of pots, how big are the pots, and keep track of the moisture levels with the moisture meter, because that works way better for me than sticking your finger in the pot. Number 5, sun exposure matters. Now, a lot of times, direct sun for even sun-loving plants can be too much. So you might want to give it some afternoon shade. You might want to move it around. If it's getting reflection off of a wall, that can accentuate the heat. So just be mindful of those things. If it seems to be struggling and it's a sun-loving plant and it's in the direct sun, give it a little bit of afternoon shade and see if it doesn't perk up or whatever. You got to experiment for your conditions. Also wind. Wind can dry out plants really fast, desiccate the leaves faster than roots can draw up moisture. So you may have to protect it from the wind. Be mindful of the conditions you have and just test things out. as far as if something's not doing well, move it around. 6, fertilizing. Now, containers will need fertilization more than in-ground plants because as you water, nutrients flush out of that soil and they have no way of making their own. Like in a bed, flower bed or border, whatever, you've got worms that are creating castings, you've got other plants drawing up nutrients from deeper down in the soil, and you've compost, all those kind of things. So in a container, it's kind of like they're relying on you to provide the nutrients they need. So there's, like on the organic liquid fertilizer I use, there's recommendations of how often and at what strength. And then also even with the synthetics, it'll tell you. Some plants, like I prefer, why do I skip? Okay. Some plants can benefit from what I call weekly. So if your fertilizer, your liquid fertilizer says to water, say, a tablespoon per gallon, and it says to do it every 6 weeks. Well, I would dilute it to half to a quarter strength, meaning using half a tablespoon to a gallon of water, or a quarter of a tablespoon to a gallon of water, or a third, whatever you decide is best. And I would fertilize every week. I would pick a day, just so I wouldn't forget. Say, a lot of people like Friday because fertilizer Friday. And they will fertilize every Friday. Now, some things do require a little bit more feeding in containers, and that's the super duper annuals that just pump out the blooms. They can usually benefit from more, but you can also add a slow release fertilizer to the soil. I wouldn't use, and this is my personal preference, the ones like Osmocote or others that are the little BBs, because they have polymers in them and it's coated with that polymer to help slowly release the fertilization, and so over time it just slowly releases. And I don't want plastics in my soils no matter what, because I do reuse my potting soils and I just don't want that in there. So I use a slow release organic fertilizer that does not have polymers. So you can look up on the ingredients and they'll usually tell you, or you can just do some research. So yeah, a granule slow release is a good way to go. If you get organic, I think they shouldn't have any polymers in them. I haven't researched that well. I don't usually use them. I just use my liquid, so that's why I really don't know yet. I should look that up. 7, do not overcrowd your plants. You will see many times people will buy, and a lot of YouTubers do it as well, they will pack really good sized plants into one container, and there is absolutely no room between the roots for them to expand and grow on. You're going to get a beautiful instant display, but you're not going to get longevity usually from those plants. You will have to switch them out sooner than if you actually let them grow in and fill in on their own. It goes really fast, so it's not necessary to have big plants in there all at once. So give them some room. You have better airflow, which reduces pest pressure. It also prevents some fungal diseases, so just think about that. And also, I personally don't buy into the thriller, spiller, filler. And I think it was Jamie Butterworth, he's a designer in England, who actually just said that himself. Keep it simple. Have one plant specimen per pot, meaning you have maybe it's petunias and just that one color. That makes a huge impact. And other pots around can have the other plants, like maybe a thriller or the spiller, and just group them together. And then it's less busy, it's simpler, and it's easy to swap out. Meaning if your spiller, you decide, no, I don't like that color. Maybe it's a chartreuse green of a plant, and you wanted something that had more silver in it. You could change the whole look by just swapping out the plant, meaning you move that pot somewhere else, you put in another pot with that grouping with another plant, and you've just changed the look. And you haven't had to transplant, and you haven't lost anything. The other one can go somewhere else in your garden. So when he said that, I felt so validated, because I know everyone goes with the adage, thriller, spiller, filler. And I find that too busy to my artist's eye, and it just, sometimes it's hard to get colors that really blend well. You think they'll go well together, and after a while you're going, that doesn't work. And this way, it makes it so much easier. Now, I know there'll be a lot of people that disagree with me, but that's really worked for me as far as putting one plant in a container, or sometimes I will do like one main plant that's the show, and then I have a backup player of greenery or white. Either greenery or white is usually what I have in there with it to create just an airy, light, beautiful feel, and you don't have any colors clashing. So there is that. 8, choose the right plants for the right container. Some plants do very, very well in containers. Geraniums do very well. The pelargoniums is what they officially are. Let me see, I got one here. This is from a cutting. And yeah, these grow very well in containers. Petunias go well in containers. There's dwarf varieties of larger plants that will do well. Like even you can grow Japanese maples in containers. I have several. I have some that I've had in containers like almost 30 years. And they keep on trucking. And I don't have to swap out the soil. I just give them the organic liquid feed, which does not build up what is called salts. Now someone said, there's no salt in my fertilizer. It's not like salt you eat. This is chemical salts, which do build up if you use a synthetic fertilizer often or in your containers. So you would need to take the plants out, trade out the soil, because those do build up. Now some people will say, well, if you just flush it out with a good over watering and you let it all flow through and they'll flush out, that's another way to do it as well. And that works. But with the organic liquid that I use, you don't get that problem. And my plants have done beautiful for, like I said, decades in containers. So now, not only does containers work for flowers, but there's also vegetables. Last year, I grew a dwarf or a container zucchini. I think it was called Astria. I'll double check with that. But I grew it in a container out in my garden, and it did beautiful. We had lots of zucchini off of it, and it never got any bigger than this. You know how zucchini, if you've grown any, can really grow big and take over spots in your garden. But this was a wonderful one, good flavor, all of that. So there are container specialized vegetables you can grow, and with many, you do need like a 5-gallon container at least. And I'm thinking of tomatoes, regular sized tomatoes. But there are dwarf ones. There's even ones that stay like this big. Tiny Tim is a cherry tomato that stays very small. But yeah, look for those. I think Renee's Garden Seeds has a whole collection for container sized vegetables. And every one I have tried has done beautifully and lots of flavor. And if you just have a little patio or balcony and you want to grow some vegetables, try those. Now I'm going to ask a question here, and I would really like the answer. Have any of you tried those green stalk planters where you can grow things? They're like little pockets on a tall tower. And if you have, how did it work for you? I've never been a fan of how they look. I mean, that's dumb. If they work, it doesn't matter what they look like. They're just a great idea for space saving. But anyways, I would like it from you guys. I've seen other garden vloggers or bloggers using them, and there's even one gal, she talked about how much food she's grown and then what she cooks from that, which I think that's a really interesting take. She not only shares growing in it, but then she fixes food in her kitchen from those vegetables. Anyways, I would love to know that. Like I said, I've never gotten one, and I'm just curious to know, because I think if I found it viable, I would love to put one on my back deck to try. So you let me know if you have used one, how it works for you. They come in a variety of colors now. They used to be just a couple of colors, and now I've seen several. I don't know, I think I'd go with a light green if I used one. Anyways, so please tell me. Number 9, you can reuse your soil, which does save a lot of money. I typically will use the same soil a couple of years in a container. And then the 3rd year, I will refresh it many times, unless I'm going to do something completely different in that container. But I will take out about 1/3 of it before I pot it up again. Like if I'm starting the summer season or the spring season, because I don't take the stuff out in the fall. I don't. I let the plants die in there. I let the roots rot away. I don't even clean out the roots. Only if there was a disease problem would I bother cleaning anything out. But I haven't had that issue. But I will take out 1/3 of the soil if I'm going to refresh it, when I'm going to replant, say spring. And then I just replace that with more potting soil, whether I make my own or whether I buy one. And then I kind of mix that in before I add my new plants to it. So that is how I refresh the soil. The old soil that I take out is not wasted. That goes into my compost bin. Again, not if there's any disease or bugs. I haven't had either. But then I put it in the compost bin and it just mixes in with the other compost and composts with that. So that is how I do or reuse the same soil year after year, and it does save a lot of money. Number 10, containers give you flexibility. If a plant isn't working in the spot that you placed it in its container, you can move it. If you just don't like it, you can move it. You're not stuck. As if you put it in a bed, it would be midsummer hard to dig it up and move it because the disturbance of the roots, it would take a little bit to recover. I'm not saying you absolutely could not. I've done it. You have to wait again for the plant to recover. But if you have a pot, it does not go through the trauma and need to recover. You just place it somewhere else. So that is one thing I really love about container gardening, and I do use them in my regular garden beds. In a previous video, I explained how I would use a big container of geraniums in a spot in the garden that maybe the perennials that are in there are done and the next perennial that's supposed to bloom hasn't bloomed yet, so it's kind of a bare spot. You can enjoy just the greenery, that works, but if you wanted a spot of color or if you've had something die off unexpectedly, put that container of flowers in that spot and you have instant color very easily. And you don't have to wait for something to fill in. So that's how I use containers in my garden as well. And it works wonderfully. So there is that. I love the flexibility you have with container gardening. So my final thoughts on this. Container gardening isn't harder than in-the-ground gardener. It's just different. Once you understand how quickly things dry out, how much you have to water, how much you have to feed, and where plants would like to be, then it's all very simple and enjoyable. And you know the best part? You can garden right outside your door, tucked in a corner of your balcony, right where you can enjoy them all the time. So start simple, pay attention as you go, and just enjoy. And adjust as needed. And really, that's how every good garden begins. And that, my friends, is my 10 tips on container gardening. I have a blog post on container gardening. I also have a video on perennials that you can grow in containers that will come back year after year and just perform for you. So if you want to see those, I will link the description in the description box below. And if you have any suggestions for plants in containers, go right ahead, leave them in the comments. I also wanted to share something with you. A few weeks ago, I shared with you how to plant up a clematis. Look at this, is my Elsa Spath. I had seen this on another gardening YouTube, a nursery. I can't remember, over something nursery. I'll link it. He was showing these, and what a tried and true performer. It's not a new variety. It's a very old variety. And yeah, I potted it up. I got mine from Brushwood Nurseries, and it was beautiful. Potted it up, and look, I've already got a flower. It's going to bloom. Isn't that amazing? I will put this out in the garden in a few weeks after I know any hard freezes are not likely. So it'll probably be closer to mid-May before I do that. I just didn't want it to be too hot when I did it. I just don't know what our weather's going to be. We've had such a strange winter and now spring. I just don't know what to do for sure. And I don't want to lose this. Now, the other one that I got from Home Depot or Lowe's, no, it was Walmart. My sister picked it up for me. Here it is. And it's doing beautifully too. So I have this stick here. I need to kind of train it around it, which I'll very gently wrap it around it. Hopefully it'll stay. But Yeah, this is what I grow bamboo for little stakes to put up. Also, friends, I told you I got a couple of new roses. And these are my weakness, my one weakness. And here they are. I'm going to put up pictures of these. I got these from Kate's Roses. They are here in California. They're in Southern California. And this one is Lila's. This is a beautiful lavender color. I think this will go well out in my garden along with my love song. Sadly, my Plum Perfect died. I went out, I was noticing it was looking bad, and it had one green cane. I thought, okay, I'm gonna go dig it up and put it in a pot. Maybe the gophers have been eating on the roots. I went to dig it up and it snapped and it was oozing. I haven't looked up and found out what that oozing could be, but it just freaked me out. And I'm hoping I don't have some kind of devastating disease or bug or something that causes that. But yeah, I love Plum Perfect. It is very heavily scented, or at least it was in my garden, and also it just bloomed and bloomed and bloomed. And it was a beautiful purple color. So I don't know what's going on, but yeah, I will replace it because I loved it that much in my garden. Now this other one is Pompanella, and it's a beautiful pink climber. Now, I will link to the YouTube channel, Gaush, I think she's in Georgia, Carolinas, where she was showing off hers and how much she loved it. And I looked it up and I thought, yes, I want this in my rose alley. Now, I am going to replace my New Dawn with this. Now, why am I replacing New Dawn? Everybody loves New Dawn because I don't like it. Plain and simple. It does not perform for me. When it did bloom, last year it did not bloom hardly at all. Very, very little. And I don't know why. The other plants, the roses all around it bloomed. It is notorious for being a bloomer. When I had it in the front on an arbor where my Eden roses are now, it did bloom. It bloomed prolifically. But I did not like how the flowers fell off. They just shattered every single day. So it was always a mess on my front walk. I didn't like that there. I thought, it's okay, I'll put it in the rose alley. It won't matter, whatever, if it does that. It's been there 3 years and hasn't done diddly. So it's out of here. If you don't perform in my garden, you're gone. And so I will dig it up, pot it up, and give it away. Somebody will enjoy it. Maybe they'll have better success with it than I have. But this is supposed to be a stellar bloomer. And it's one that I have never tried before. So yes, I am right now really liking, there's Japanese florist roses, there are some Chinese florist roses, some, are they German or from the Netherlands? There's some really interesting colors and shapes of blooms that I want to try. So I will slowly purchase some. They are not cheap, so I have to save. And how I save is by growing my other things from seed, my other plants. The roses are something I'm going to add more of to my garden, and I'm just going to enjoy doing that, and that's going to be a lot of my focus instead of trying a bunch of other plants. But I have fun. I mean, like here, I winter sowed some red gaillardia. There's probably 8 plants in here. I'm going to pot them up, and very cheap. I had those seeds a couple of years. It's a variety I've been wanting, and I know gaillardias, they grow like weeds for me. So that cost me maybe $3. So the container reusable, I buy bulk compost, make my own DIY potting soil. It's all good, all very inexpensive. And I do a lot of propagation of other plants to get more for my garden. So what I save, I can splurge on my little roses that I love. I would love to go to their nursery, Kate's Roses, and tour it. I'm sure it's amazing, and it wouldn't be that far of a drive for me to go. So that sounds like fun. Okay, I shared my roses and all my clematis that's doing great. There's so much going on. It's supposed to be cloudy today, and you can see the sun's coming through. I'm not complaining. It's just, I was trying to get out here while it was not too sunny because this greenhouse gets hot when it's too sunny, or is sunny. All right, I will see you in my next video where we will talk more gardening. No telling what, but we'll be here. All right, see you next time.